You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and as promised yesterday, I'm going to start this show off by eulogizing the late, great Elgin Baylor. Now, that word great is thrown around willy-nilly. Elgin Baylor was great. In fact, that may be an understatement. He was elite. In the late 50s to the late 60s, there were very few players that were as good as Elgin Baylor. You've got Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Bob Cousy, Jerry West, and a little later, a guy like Hondo. That's probably it. In terms of sheer dominance, those are probably all the guys that come anywhere close to Baylor in the era that he played. He went to college at the University of Seattle, and he dominated there. Made 2 All-American teams. His senior year, the Red Hawks made the Final Four. He was the Final Four's most outstanding player that year. In 57, he led the NCAA in rebounds. The only bad thing about his college career is that he didn't go to Baylor University. Elgin Baylor should have went to Baylor University. I have no idea if that was a possibility or not. But it would just be fun to say that Elgin Baylor attended Baylor University. Baylor was picked with the first overall pick in the 1958 NBA draft. And he really saved the Lakers franchise. The owner of the Lakers at that time was a man by the name of Bob Short. At that time, the Lakers were struggling. George Mikan had left. The Lakers got the first overall pick because they went 19-53. By all accounts, they were a bad team. All due respect to guys like Vern Mickelson, Larry Faust, and Dick Garmaker. But you can't have those guys being your 3 best players if you want to win. They weren't drawing at the box office. Short was quoted in an interview after Baylor retired as saying that if Elgin Baylor had turned him down after he was drafted, the Lakers would have gone bankrupt. Imagine an NBA with no Lakers. They never moved to LA. Kareem's career is different. Magic's career is different. James Worthy's career is different. Kobe Bryant probably goes to the Nets, it's no exaggeration to say that Elgin Baylor saved the Lakers franchise. In Baylor's first 7 seasons in the NBA, he made the All-Star team, averaged over 40 minutes a game, averaged a double-double, and averaged over 24 points a game. He won Rookie of the Year. The Lakers made the playoffs every year. They made 4 NBA Finals his first 7 years. They were fantastic. I mean, when you have Elgin Baylor and Jerry West on the court together for 40 minutes a night, you can have Mo, Larry, and Curly on the court with them. That team's gonna win. I mean, I don't want to gloss over those 7 years. Baylor, in his rookie year, scored 55 points in one game. That was the 3rd highest total in NBA history at that point. His junior season, in a game against the Knicks, Baylor scored 71 points. The most points ever scored in an NBA game. You know whose record he broke? Elgin Baylor's. In a game the previous year, Baylor had 64 points. It wasn't until Wilt Chamberlain had 78 points in a triple overtime win against Elgin Baylor that record was broken. Then, as we all know, Chamberlain dropped 100. In the 61-62 season, Baylor was on active duty as a member of the U.S. Army Reserve. He was stationed at Fort Lewis in the state of Washington. Now, Baylor still played for the Lakers. He could only leave on a weekend pass, so that's why he only played in 48 games. But that year, while having to train with the Army, Baylor averaged 44.5 minutes per game, attempted 33 shots per game, had 38 points per game, 18.5 rebounds per game. Again, he made the All-Star team, and the Lakers came within 1 point of beating the big bad Celtics. If they had scored just one more point, that game never goes into overtime, and the Celtics don't win by 3. Imagine a player today serving in the Army Reserve and playing in the NBA. It's one of the most superhuman seasons in sports history, and it doesn't get remembered as such. I mean, realize, Baylor put up 38 points per game before the 3-point line was a thing. So this guy was just draining twos. His running bank shot with that blink and you miss it release, he was able to arc it over taller players like Wilt and Russell, etc., is one of the best shots in NBA history. It's right up there with Kareem's skyhook. In fact, just going back to the 62 NBA Finals, in Game 5 of that series, Baylor dropped 61 points. That is an NBA Finals record. And I know I'm bouncing around a little bit. I'm sorry. It's just, this is a hard one. I mean, it's really sad that Baylor isn't remembered more fondly. NBA fans under the age of 50, sure, they know the name Elgin Baylor. You can look at his basketball reference page and see the numbers he put up, but they don't know the ins and outs of his story. They don't realize the dominant force that he was. Elgin Baylor is arguably the most underrated player in NBA history. Baylor's career started to go sideways in 1965. In a playoff game against the Baltimore Bullets, Baylor suffered a devastating knee injury. He ended up needing knee surgery. He didn't play at all in the NBA Finals. That's why the Celtics destroyed the Lakers in 5 games. And that led to his bad 65-66 season, where he ended up missing the All-Star team, the only full season of his career where he missed an All-Star team. I'd say he only put up 16.5 points per game, but that's still impressive. It's not anywhere close to the numbers he put up previously, but still, it's not bad. Baylor was good, he just wasn't great. Did he get back to great? The answer is yes. From the 66-67 season to the 69-70 season, Baylor did make the All-Star team. He put up at least 24 points in all those seasons. But he wasn't elite. Again, not bad, just not the Baylor of old. In fact, I'd venture to say that if Baylor was the Baylor of old, the Lakers win an extra game in the 69 NBA Finals, and they win an extra game in the 70 Finals. The Celtics and Knicks don't win those years. The biggest travesty of Elgin Baylor's career is that he went up against Russell Celtics year after year after year. And I don't care how great you are, you're not beating them. I mean, not to make too hard a left turn, but the only NBA Finals that Bill Russell ever lost as a player was in his sophomore season to the Bob Pettit-led St. Louis Hawks. Cliff Hagan was there too. The point is, there's a reason that those Celtics teams won 11 finals in 13 years. The Lakers of Baylor just weren't as deep. There was no team in the NBA that was as deep. Yes, they had the dynamic duo of Baylor and West, but who else was there? Rudy LaRusso? Happy Hairston? Frank Selvey? All due respect to those guys can't be the third best players on title winners. I mean, that's why Baylor's legacy isn't remembered as fondly as he should be. He didn't get a ring. He got an honorary ring in 72, but the guy only played 9 games that year. I mean, it's a great story as to why he retired. Baylor wasn't playing up to his standards. He was a shell of his former self. The team was better without him. There's no question. They went on the epic 33-game win streak. Obviously, they had Chamberlain by then. They still had West. They had Gail Goodrich. And they had Jim McMillan. But Elgin, my God, just stick around as a bench player. Say to Bill Sharman, take me out of the rotation or only have me play like 13 minutes a game. You'll see some people say that it was because of the nagging injuries. That's why he retired. It really wasn't. It was because Baylor just wasn't playing up to his standards. Now that's a novel reason to go out. I feel I'm holding the team back. I'm going to retire. But you've got to be selfish on your own behalf. Was there any way to know that the Lakers would win the NBA Finals that year and they'd go on that 33-game win streak? No. But hindsight's 2020. Yes, I know, I'm Monday morning quarterbacking it. But that does hurt Baylor a little bit. Another thing that hurts Baylor's legacy is the years that he spent with the New Orleans Jazz and the LA Clippers. He coached the Jazz for a little over 2.5 seasons. Was absolutely dreadful. Then he went to the Clippers. Was their vice president of basketball operations for 22 years. And yeah, the Clippers were dreadful. They only had 2 winning seasons. They only won 1 playoff series. I get that. Now, I'm not defending what Baylor did with the Jazz. Those teams should have been better. But don't blame him for the Clippers. The guy was working for Donald Sterling, one of the worst owners in sports history. Ardent racist, we all know this. Does Baylor deserve some of the blame? The answer is yes, but I don't think he should get the lion's share of the blame. The lion's share should go to Sterling. But when you're talking about just his playing career, there were very few players that were as dominant as Elgin Baylor. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame, the College Basketball Hall of Fame. His number 22 is up in the Staples Center's rafters. He is, without question, one of the best players in NBA history. May he rest in peace. While I'm on the subject of the NBA, Draymond Green made some interesting comments on a podcast entitled Dubs Talk. Green said that he is the best defender to ever play in the NBA. No. I mean, there's no other way to say it. No, he's not. He's not even close. Does Green deserve to be in the conversation? The answer is yes. But if you really think about it, he doesn't crack the all-defensive team. Like, I seriously worked this out. If you were putting a team together from 1 to 5, and you just had the best defender at each position, who would it be? I'll give you my team. I'd love to hear yours. Seriously. Tweet at me, at RealJacobValk. Or leave a comment on YouTube. I know a lot of people are watching this show on YouTube now. Very interesting, the progression of this show. Point guard, the answer is Gary Payton. There's a reason he was called the Glove. Shooting guard, Tony Allen. A lot of people said that he's the best defender in NBA history. Obviously, he has more of a case than Green, but I don't think I'd give him that title. Small forward, Kawhi Leonard. The guy locked up LeBron James in the 2014 NBA Finals. There's a reason he won Finals MVP that year. Power forward is Tim Duncan. The guy made more all-defensive teams than any player in NBA history. And center is Dikembe Mutombo. I don't think you can put Draymond Green over Tim Duncan. In fact, I don't even think Green is the backup on that team. Kevin Garnett, Bobby Jones, Dennis Rodman. There are a lot of guys to get to before you get to Draymond Green. I mean, if you wanted to put Green as your backup power forward, okay, fine. But I wouldn't. I'll tell you right now. For whatever it's worth, if I'm completing the bench, I'll put Jason Kidd as the backup 1. Then I'll go Dennis Johnson. Scottie Pippen's the backup 3. I feel like I'd put in Bobby Jones as the backup 4. There's a reason why he was called the Secretary of Defense. And backup center, I gotta go with Bill Russell. Notice how Green isn't there. He doesn't deserve to be. And just for whatever it's worth, I'm not saying that Bill Russell would come off the bench for Dikembe Mutombo if those guys played together. I'm just saying that if we're ranking them defensively, I'll put Mutombo ahead of Russell. Mutombo won 4 Defensive Player of the Years. More than anyone, except Ben Wallace. But seriously, I'd love to know what your 10-man rotation would be for best defensive team in NBA history. Please, tweet at me, at RealJacobValk. Leave a comment on YouTube. Get in contact with me. Let's go. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. And I'll start with the Buccaneers making a couple big moves. They locked up Donovan Smith to a big 2-year extension worth $31.8 million. And they brought back Ndamukong Suh on a 1-year deal worth $9 million. I'll start with Smith. This is a really good move. He is one of the better left tackles in the NFL. 72.1 overall grade last year, according to Pro Football Focus. This does put him in the upper echelon of left tackles in terms of AAV. But he deserves it because he's been a really good left tackle for a long time. You've got to keep Tom Brady upright. If he wants to play past the age of 45, he can't afford to take too many hits. And you know what? He doesn't take too many hits with Smith as his left tackle. Good job by the Bucs there. As for bringing back Sue, I understand it. I like Ndamukong Suh. He doesn't have those moments anymore that make you want to kill him, whether he's stepping on someone's arm or he's kicking someone in the nether region. He's matured as a player. Give him credit. I remember after the Dolphins cut him and he went to the Rams, I wanted him with the Jets. I thought it would have made perfect sense for him. But he did take a little bit of a step back last year. He had just a 61.8 overall grade. That's the lowest grade he's ever had, with the exception of his sophomore season. $9 million just seems like too much for him. You know, I'm seeing comparable players sign for less. I understand if you're Jason Light, you want to keep the band together. And that's fair. That's a reasonable mindset. No one can begrudge you for that. You don't have much of a choice because you don't have a lot of cap room. But they did win the Super Bowl. It's reasonable to want to run it back. But it's hard for me to get behind this move. Give Light credit for keeping his core together. Extending Smith makes sense. Bringing Sue back, I can't get behind that. Moving on now to the Seahawks signing Kerry Hyder to a 3-year deal worth $16.5 million. And this is a really good move. Firstly, you take Hyder away from a division rival. You gotta love that. And the Seahawks defensive line needed help. Outside of Poona Ford, no defensive lineman really had a good year for the Seahawks. Damon Harrison was good in his 6 games there, but again, it was 6 games. It doesn't seem like LJ Collier is working out. Jaron Reed isn't working out. The Seahawks needed defensive line help. They did a good job in getting Hyder. Last year he had a 68.6 overall grade. Best year of his career. He had 9 sacks. He'll go a long way towards fortifying that D-line. The contract is more than fair. They're not paying him an exorbitant amount whatsoever. This is a good job by John Schneider. Again, let me reiterate. Russell Wilson isn't going anywhere. They're doing a solid job of building around him. Moving on now to the Broncos, bringing back Kareem Jackson on a 1-year deal worth $5 million. Because only in the NFL can you get rid of someone who's on a big salary and then bring him back on a lower salary. No other sport does that. No other business does that. You gotta love the NFL. I mean, I give Kareem Jackson credit for being amenable to it. If I was him, I would have said, no, this is the contract I signed. If you want me back, honor it. I don't think the Broncos would have gone for it. Jackson took a discount to stay with his team. Give him credit. And the guy has been great for the Broncos. 80.4 overall grade last year. 82.3 overall grade the year before. I mean, Jackson was due something like $11 million if the Broncos didn't decline his option. If the Broncos were to have given Jackson 11 mil, or if any team were to have given him 11 mil, I would have been perfectly fine with it. I like Jackson a lot. There was a point in time when I wanted him on the Jets. Then again, I feel like I say that about everyone, but it's true. I don't remember the year. But I've liked Jackson for a while. Had some bad years early in his career, then he righted the ship. Give him credit. Moving on now to the Giants, signing Ryan Anderson to a 1-year deal worth $1.125 million. And I'm not crazy about this move. I don't want to go crazy over it because I praised what the Giants did yesterday, and I don't want people to say, oh, Jacob, you're just being biased because you hate the Giants. And it's a cheap move. It's not going to break the bank or anything. I'm not going to bang tables over it, but if you wanted a backup defensive end, you could do a lot better than Ryan Anderson. 49.6 overall grade last year. In 2019, the only year in his career where he played over 200 snaps, he had a 58.2 overall grade. The guy isn't that good. I understand he's the backup defensive end. You can't bang tables over it. Hopefully you won't see him a lot if you're a Giants fan. But it's hard for me to really get behind this move. There were better defensive linemen available. Moving on now to the Bills, re-signing Isaiah Mckenzie to a 1-year deal worth $1.15 million. And this is a good move for the Bills. Don't look now, but they have a really good wide receiver core. Diggs, Sanders, Beasley, Davis, and Mckenzie. That's pretty good. Give the Bills a ton of credit for giving Josh Allen a lot of weapons to play with. And Mckenzie had a good year last year. He had 30 catches for 282 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's also a good special teamer. Brian Dable also has some gadget plays with Mckenzie at quarterback. He did throw a 12-yard touchdown pass to Josh Allen in the first quarter of the Hail Murray game. Mckenzie's a good player. This contract is more than fair for him. If anything, it's a steal. Great job by the Bills. Moving on now to the Eagles, signing Joe Flacco to a 1-year deal worth $3.5 million. And I don't like this move for the Eagles. I understand that they needed a backup, and Flacco obviously has a lot of experience, Super Bowl MVP, wasn't the worst quarterback in the world when He was forced to fill in for Darnold. Wasn't great. You could tell he was past his prime, but he didn't embarrass himself. And the Eagles needed a backup. I get all that. But here's the thing. And this is what a lot of teams miss when they sign backup quarterbacks. You want a backup quarterback with a similar skill set to your starting quarterback, so you don't need to throw the offense in total disarray if he plays. You'd be hard-pressed to find two more diametrically opposed quarterbacks than Jalen Hurts and Joe Flacco. Hurts is mobile. We all know this. Loves to run. Abandons the pass very quickly. Joe Flacco was never that. I mean, there was a play when Flacco tried to make something out of nothing in a game against the Dolphins last year, where he was sacked for a 28-yard loss by Emmanuel Ogbah. If Hurts is behind center, he's evading Ogbah. I mean, it's kind of tough because there weren't any mobile backup quarterbacks available in free agency. Tyrod Taylor was a free agent, but he's now a Texan. But you've got to find someone to be that proper backup to Hurts. Nick Sirianni is designing an offense with a mobile quarterback. If Flacco's under center at any point, that whole playbook goes out the window. This is a risky move for the Eagles. Moving on now to the Broncos cutting Nick Vannett. And I don't mind this move. It saves the Broncos over $2.5 million. Vannett isn't a terrible tight end, but he's not great. Last year he had 14 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown. And I'll throw this in there. He started 11 games. 14 catches in 11 games. That's not good. I understand that Vannett was only targeted 21 times. But that's still tough for a starting tight end. The Broncos are going to have Albert Okwuegbunam and Troy Fumagalli healthy. There was no room for Vannett. There are some good pieces around Drew Lock. He's just got to be able to put it all together. I'm not confident that he can. Moving on now to the Steelers cutting Steven Nelson. And I'm really surprised that the Steelers couldn't find anyone to take him. There were rumors that he was being shopped. I'd have taken him if I needed a corner. You can do a lot worse than Steven Nelson. Last year he had a 67.1 overall grade. The year before it was 80.5. Nelson's a good player. And let me tell you, I am not confident in this Steelers cornerbacks core. No Mike Hilton. No Nelson. Joe Hayden and Cameron Sutton are good players. But Kevin Colbert has some work to do. I've seen people say that the Jets could be interested in Nelson. They need corners. There's no question. But I'd prefer Malcolm Butler. If I'm going to sign an outside corner, I'd rather have Butler. I wouldn't be upset if Nelson signed with the Jets. I like Nelson. I think he's a good player. But I do think that Butler is better. The last football story to talk about is the Texans cutting Chad Hansen, a guy who has had an extremely interesting career. I'll go in reverse chronological order. Hansen played really well for the Texans to close out the 2020 season. 17 catches for 236 yards and a touchdown. They were in desperate need for a wide receiver. They caught lightning in a bottle with Hansen. And it's funny, when I saw the news that Hansen was going off, it's like, there's no way that's the former Jet Chad Hansen. That's got to be another player with the same name. No, it's the former Jet. If you don't remember, Hansen was a 4th round pick for the Jets in 2017. And if you don't remember this, it's perfectly fine. He only had 9 catches for 94 yards. And that's it. I just took you through Chad Hansen's whole NFL career. He didn't play in 18. He didn't play in 19. He didn't play in most of 20. And you know what? Late in the year, he was a good target for Deshaun Watson. I'd have liked the Texans to have found a way to keep Hansen, especially since they really don't have a good wide receiver depth chart right now. It's Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, and Kiki Cutie. That's not great. It's not awful, but it's not great. I mean, Cooks is great, don't get me wrong, but once you get past him, that's shaky. Nick Caserio is continuing to overhaul this Texans roster. They really needed it. And now there are 16 people accusing Watson of sexual assault. Of course, the guy who I think could be the Jets starting quarterback week 1 has this hanging over his head. Murphy's Law never holds truer than when it's applied to the New York Jets. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you the NBA trade deadline show. It's probably going to be posted later than usual, somewhere in the 4:30 range. I just want to make sure I get all the details of all the NBA trades. We've heard some big names mentioned in the rumor mill. Kyle Lowry, Norman Powell, John Collins, and Aaron Gordon, just to name a few. It's going to be interesting. I will give you some other sports stories also, if I need to, but tomorrow's show will probably be very NBA heavy. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying that ball players do things backwards. First they play, then they retire and go to work.